What's going on YouTube? Pyro Tycoon, bringing you the second video in my Year in Review 2011 series. This one is for Sony, Year in Review 2011 Sony. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start with the good stuff that happened to Sony in 2011. First off, the PS3 had a lot of exclusives come out during that year. Just to name a few, there was Little Big Planet 2, Infamous 2, Uncharted 3, Killzone 3, Resistance 3, SOCOM 4. There's others I can't think of from the top of my head right now, but I know there was a lot of exclusives that came out for the PS3 that year, and that's definitely good because exclusives is what helps you separate yourself from your competition. You know, Microsoft's got the Halo and Gears as exclusives. Right now, Nintendo has a whole butt ton. So the more exclusives, it's good because it helps separate you from the other guys. So that was definitely a good thing on Sony's part. On the PS3 front, I know on the PSP, as far as the PSP goes, I don't know if like how many new games came out for the PSP, to be honest, but I do know they started like bundling 2 PSP games together for like $15. It's ridiculous. Like you could get 2 of the PSP Mega Man games for $15, or like 2 Monster Hunter games for $15. Like it was insane. Like that's incredibly good. So definitely Sony trying to push out software for the PSP. That was definitely a good sign. And in Japan, the Vita was released towards the end of the year in 2011. Okay, so there was the good stuff, and then there was kind of a lot of bad stuff that happened to Sony in 2011 as well. I'm not going to go into like great detail. If you really want to go into great detail of like the state of Sony and whatnot, Dark Cloud has a video on it. I forget the title, but it's called something. Basically, no, I think it's the Fall of Sony Part 1 and Fall of Sony Part 2. So if you want to like a full in-depth kind of like situation on how Sony's doing, or like kind of like all the bad stuff that happened to them in 2011, go watch that video. I'm just going to touch on it from like the gaming standpoint, like the PlayStation brand standpoint. First off, I think it was in April. I don't know exactly when it was, but I know during like early 2011 there was obviously the PSN hack. PlayStation Network was down for like 3 to 4 weeks, I believe. I know it was over 3 weeks, but PlayStation Network was down. And now it's not so much the fact that it was down that was bad, but it's really how Sony handled it. It was like, you know, it was down for a few days. Oh, it's maintenance. And then like 4 or 5 days, people were like, what the fuck? And I think at the 7th day, Sony was like, okay, there's a possibility we've been hacked. You might want to do this and that. But at that point, it was already too late for some people because they already had some of their information taken from them. Their cards were being used. I mean, it was just ridiculous, out of hand. People were trading in their PS3s. GameStop stopped taking them. They started giving away like GameStop coupons on the PowerUp Reward site, $100 off a PlayStation 3. Like, it was insane. That was, I mean, they handled the situation poorly. It was a very bad situation to be in the first place. But I think that really held back the PS3 in 2011. Because, I mean, think about it. That's like 3 weeks to a month where you're not really pushing out PlayStation 3s. No one's really playing PlayStation 3 because PlayStation Network was down. I mean, that was pretty much a whole month lost right there. And PS3 was definitely like stacked that year. I mean, with all the exclusives that came out for it. I mean, it looked like, it really did. It looked like it was about to overtake 360. But didn't happen, and I mainly believe it's because of PlayStation Network hack. A lot of people lost their trust with Sony. No, a lot of people aren't really too fond of Sony after that. So I think that was a big part. And then obviously the earthquake tsunami in Japan, they definitely lost a bit of money there. And I know they donated a lot of money to help kind of rebuild Japan. So, I mean, those are like the 2 main things as far as like the gaming side that kind of hurt them during that year. And then we got the Vita that came out towards the end of the year in Japan. Now, during the first week, it didn't do like as good as the first week of the 3DS. I mean, the difference was pretty minimal, but it was there. And people, you know, we all remember when the 3DS first came out, a bunch of doom and gloom. Oh my goodness, it's not selling. Nintendo's screwed. So PS Vita launched, and it sold a little less than the 3DS did in its first week. But then the second week comes by, and it just significantly drops. And that's when people are starting to get worried. And then there's all these people screaming, PSP is a failure, it's doomed, they just should give up right now, blah, 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 blah. Now, I can't say I agree with all that, because if you look at the PSP launch lineup, it's not geared towards a Japanese market. It isn't. I mean, the biggest game on there was Uncharted Golden Abyss, and Japanese people just aren't really into that game like they are other games. Like if it launched with Tales of Innocence R, I'm sure it would have done a lot better in Japan. But I mean, you look at the launch lineup, it's a Western market. It's geared towards the Western market, excuse me. So yeah, I mean, when we see it launch over here in the United States, when we see it launch in Europe, it'll give us a better idea of how the system is really doing. I know a lot of people are like, oh, it doesn't make a difference, it comes out over here. Yes, it does make a difference, because those games are not for the Japanese people. So, of course, they weren't really out there buying the software. Of course, they're not out there buying the hardware, because none of the software was really appealing to those people. So, there's that as far as, like, PSP selling that in Japan. Oh, well, or Vita, my bad, Vita. There's like a couple of other reasons, like some people had a lot of like bug issues, like the Vita kept freezing and some other things, and they took it up with Sony. At this point, I don't know if Sony addressed it or not, but it just left a bad taste in people's mouth. But you think about it, when new hardware launches, there's issues. I mean, it doesn't matter what the hell it is, there's issues. So basically, what can you expect? It's new hardware. Now, the price tag of the Vita, I think, is also kind of like another reason why it's not really selling as much. I mean, $250 is a great price for the handheld. For the Vita itself, $250 is fantastic. It's a very good price. But then they got like this other stuff. There's no internal memory. And for a game, well, a lot of the games, most of the games I believe, especially like Uncharted. For Uncharted, just to save the game, you have to have memory. So then you have to go out and buy a special PS Vita memory stick, and I think the cheapest one is a 4 gig for $20. And it just seems ridiculous as far as that goes. I mean, even the 3DS had built-in internal memory so you could save your shit. It came with, I think, 1 gigabyte of internal flash memory, and then it came with a 2 gigabyte SD card. So I mean, right off the bat, the 3DS came with 3 gigabytes worth of storage space. Vita comes with none. You have to purchase it all yourself, and it uses proprietary memory card storage formatting, kind of like the PSP, but they created a whole new thing for the Vita. And 20 for 4 gigs is absurd. It's ridiculous, especially when you're trying to push this handheld, trying to promote it as like the portable PlayStation 3. So this thing is supposed to get system updates. This thing is supposed to get like downloadable content for games. You're supposed to be able to download PSN games, and you didn't really push memory. I mean, there's no internal memory at all, and then your memory card prices are kind of like out there. So really the PS Vita is like $270 if you want to go get the memory card and the Wi-Fi Vita. So, I mean, it doesn't seem smart. I mean, I'm not saying you have to go the Nintendo route and just like screw it and use SD cards. I mean, that would be nice, that'd be simple, but you didn't have to create a whole new Vita format. you could have just taken PSP memory cards and been like, okay, these are the same memory cards we're going to use for the Vita, and then you could have came out and made bigger like PSP memory cards and have them compatible with both PSP and the Vita. I think that would have been a lot better. I think that would have been easier. I mean, personally, I would have preferred like SD cards, but I think that would have been the second best option, to make PSP memory cards compatible with the Vita. That's just me though. I think they definitely fucked up as far as the memory goes. The 3G plan isn't too bad. It's month-to-month basis. It's not like a 2-year contract or some shit like that. I think it's just $15 a month, and you can choose whether or not just to like cut it off. And that's not a bad idea. They actually did the 3G thing pretty good. I know over here in the States, the 3G's with AT&T, and I don't think that was too smart, because there's a lot of people that just really hate AT&T. But is what it is. I think the general audience is just going to pick up the Wi-Fi version anyways. There's some good things about the Vita, bad things about the Vita. I went ahead and I listed all the bad things, but the good things, there's a lot of good things about it too. Like the multi-touch touchscreen, you know, it allows for a lot of basically kind of like smartphone games. I know the back touchpad, I still have yet to see exactly like how this can really be used, but I think that opens up some possibilities. It obviously has the 2 analog sticks, the D-pad, diamond button, shoulder buttons, things pretty powerful. When it launches over here, it's going to have a few more games than it did over in Japan. I mean, it's going to launch with Uncharted Golden Abyss, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and some other stuff. There's a lot of games coming out for the Vita that look promising. I know the Mortal Kombat, I think, Complete Edition is going to come out for the Vita. Street Fighter Cross Tekken. There's going to be a BioShock game that comes out for it. I mean, so it does look promising, but like if you just look at the Japanese release and the sales, it doesn't. But when it comes over here, we'll get a better idea of how it really will do. So 2011 for the Vita, very short, wasn't good overall. 2012, I think, is going to start picking up. But anyways, year in view, let me just summarize all this for Sony. There's a lot of good things that went on with Sony, but at the same time, there's a lot of bad things that went on with Sony. And in the end, it just really kind of evens out as far as like the gaming perspective goes. Again, you can watch Dark Cloud's video to actually see how Sony is doing. I mean, they're not doing too good as a company right now. But as far as like the mind of gamers, like what we got in 2011 from Sony, good and bad. I mean, you can decide for yourself how it ultimately ended up for you. But it's just kind of, for me, because there's, like I said, a lot of good, a lot of bad. And to me, it just kind of evens out. And for me, it's just kind of a year for Sony. Hopefully 2012 is a lot better for them. I know they have a lot of exclusives lined up to come out this year as well. But anyways, this video is dragging on way too long. Pyro Tycoon, I'm done.
We have the princess.